I took the job because I owed $11,000 to a hospital in Flagstaff, and my unemployment had run out in March. The listing said, overnight security, remote desert station, and paid $18 an hour for 12-hour shifts, 5 nights a week, no degree required, no background check, just a valid driver's license and a willingness to work alone. The drive from Phoenix took 4.5 hours. The last 40 miles were unpaved, and my sedan suspension made sounds I'd never heard before. I arrived at Station 4 of the Saguaro Wilderness Preserve at 3:17 p.m. on a Tuesday in late September. The temperature was 94 degrees. The wind smelled like creosote and dust. Station 4 was a single-story building with tan stucco walls and a flat roof. It sat at the edge of a shallow wash, facing north toward a ridge of volcanic rock that looked black even in full daylight. Behind the station, maybe 60 yards out, there was a maintenance shed with a padlocked door and no windows. The visitor center was a 1/4 mile west, connected to the station by a gravel path that someone had lined with solar-powered ground lights. A man named Delgado met me at the station's front entrance. He was the outgoing guard, finishing his last week before relocating to Tucson. He was in his 50s, compact, with a gray mustache and hands that never stopped moving. He shook my hand once, hard, then unlocked the door and stepped aside so I could enter first. The interior was sparse, a main room with a desk, 2 monitors showing camera feeds, a corkboard with maps and schedules, a kitchenette in the back corner, a supply room to the left, its door propped open with a cinder block, a small bathroom to the right. 1 window faced north toward the ridge. 1 window faced west toward the visitor center. The east wall had no windows, just a service door with 3 deadbolts. Delgado gave me my keys, 12 of them on a steel ring, each labeled with masking tape and black marker. He showed me the locker where I'd store my personal items, the radio charger, the landline phone, and the logbook where I'd record my shift activities. He explained the camera system, the generator backup, the location of the first aid kit. He was thorough and efficient. He did not smile. At 4:45 p.m., he handed me a laminated sheet of paper. "Read this before your first shift," he said. "Read it again tomorrow, and again every night until you don't need to read it anymore." I looked at the sheet. The header said, "Standard Operating Procedures, Station 4. Overnight shift." Below that was a numbered list. "Questions come after," Delgado said. "Read it first, all of it." I read it. 1. Between 1:45 and 2:15 a.m., all exterior lights must be turned off manually using the panel by the front door. Resume exterior lighting at 2:16 a.m. exactly. Do not deviate from this window. 2. If you hear knocking at the east service door, do not respond verbally. Remain silent and count to 60. If the knocking stops before 60 seconds, do not open the door. If the knocking continues past 60 seconds without pause, it is safe to open. 3. The maintenance shed behind Station 4 is off limits after sunset. All equipment retrieval must occur before 5:45 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. If you require something from the shed after dark, wait until morning. 4. If you encounter another park employee on the North Trail between midnight and 4 a.m., verify their badge number before engaging in conversation. During night shift, all valid badge numbers end in even digits. If the badge number ends in an odd digit, return to the station immediately without speaking. 5. Radio check-ins occur at 12:30 2:30 and 4:30 a.m. Use channel 6 only. State your station number, then wait for dispatch to respond. If dispatch says confirmed, proceed with your shift. If dispatch says acknowledged, do not reply. Switch to channel 9 and do not use the radio again until the next scheduled check-in. 6. The visitor center's west-facing windows must be covered with blackout curtains between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. Curtains may be opened at 4:01 a.m., no earlier. 7. Do not look directly at the southern ridge between 2:45 and 3:15 a.m. If your duties require you to face south during this window, keep your eyes focused on the ground or on an object within arm's reach. 8. If the interior temperature of the station drops more than 15 degrees Fahrenheit within a 5-minute period, relocate to the supply room immediately. Remain there until the temperature stabilizes. Verify stabilization by checking the thermometer mounted on the main room's east wall. 9. Coyotes in the preserve typically travel in pairs. If you observe a solitary coyote that does not retreat when illuminated by your flashlight, return indoors and lock all entry points. Do not attempt to scare it away. Do not watch it through the windows. 10. Before each patrol, verify the following: water supply minimum 2 liters, flashlight battery above 60%, flare count minimum 3. Log these figures in the supply ledger before departing and after returning. 11. Do not answer the station's landline telephone between 1 a.m. and 1:30 a.m. Allow it to ring. Log the duration and time of the call, but do not pick up the receiver. 12. If you hear your name being called from outside the station after midnight, do not respond verbally or physically. Note the time and the direction of the voice in your log. Do not investigate the source until after sunrise. I finished reading. I looked at Delgado. He was watching me with an expression I couldn't identify. "You have questions," he said. "Why?" "Wrong question." I waited. "Right question is, can you follow them?" He folded his arms. "Exactly. Every night, even when they don't make sense, even when you're tired, even when you think you know better. I can follow instructions. Good, because the people who couldn't aren't here anymore." He picked up his bag and walked toward the front door. "I'll be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. to watch your first shift. After that, you're on your own." He left. I sat at the desk and read the rules again. At 5:30 p.m., I walked to the maintenance shed and retrieved the items Delgado had listed for me: a backup radio, a coil of rope, and a 5-pound bag of coarse salt. The shed was hot inside and smelled like motor oil. I did not linger. I locked it behind me and returned to the station by 5:42 p.m. The sun set at 6:53. I watched it from the north-facing window, an orange line flattening against the ridge until it disappeared. The desert went blue, then gray, then black. The solar lights along the gravel path flickered on, pale yellow dots that made the darkness around them look thicker. I ate a sandwich from the cooler I'd packed. I checked the camera feeds. I tested the radio on channel 6. Dispatch responded with a flat, professional voice. "Station 4, signal received. Stand by for scheduled check-in at 0:30. I said, "Copy that." At 10:45 p.m., I walked to the visitor center to verify the curtain status. The building was empty, its main hall lit by dim emergency strips along the baseboards. The west-facing windows were floor-to-ceiling glass, overlooking a patio and a parking lot that could hold 40 vehicles. At night, with no exterior lights on, the glass reflected the interior back at me. I could see my own shape, distorted and colorless, standing in the middle of the hall. I pulled the blackout curtains closed, all 6 panels. I tugged each one to make sure the edges overlapped. I checked my watch. 10:58 p.m. I walked back to Station 4 and logged the task. At 11:20 p.m., I heard footsteps outside. They were deliberate and evenly spaced. I counted them from the desk. 1, 2, 3, 4. They circled the building clockwise, moving along the north wall, then the east, then the south, then the west. When they completed the circuit, they started again. Same pace, same rhythm. I did not look out the windows. I counted 3 full circuits, 48 steps each, before they stopped. I wrote in the logbook, 11:20 p.m. to 11:26 p.m. Footsteps circling station. 3 circuits. No visual confirmation attempted. At 12:30 a.m., I performed my first radio check-in. Station 4, Channel 6, check-in. 3 seconds of static. Then, Station 4, confirmed. I exhaled. I logged the check-in and the response code. At 12:45 a.m., I conducted my first patrol. The North Trail was a loop of packed dirt that wound through a stand of saguaros, curved around a dry wash, and returned to the station from the east. Total distance, 1.3 miles. Estimated time, 40 minutes at a careful pace. I verified my supplies. 2.5 liters of water, flashlight at 84%, 3 flares, and logged them in the ledger. The night was cool, 61 degrees, no moon. The stars were dense enough that I could navigate by their light alone, but I kept my flashlight on anyway, sweeping the beam across the trail every few seconds. Saguaros threw long shadows. Cholla glowed silver where the light caught their spines. I saw nothing unusual for the first 20 minutes. A kangaroo rat scurried across the trail at the halfway point. A great horned owl called from somewhere to the west. The radio stayed silent. At 1:03 a.m., I reached the eastern bend of the trail. The station was visible from here, a dark shape against the darker ridge. I could see the faint glow of the monitors through the north window. I heard my name. David! It came from the south, somewhere beyond the wash. A woman's voice, calm and clear. Not shouting, just speaking, as if she were standing 10 feet away. I stopped walking. I did not turn toward the voice. I did not respond. David, I need help. I checked my watch. 1:07 a.m. I resumed walking, faster now, keeping my flashlight aimed at the trail. I counted my steps. 200 to the station. I did not run. The voice did not call again. I reached the station at 1:14 a.m. I locked the front door behind me, then the east service door, then the supply room door. I checked each deadbolt twice. I wrote in the logbook, 1:07 a.m. Voice calling my name from the south during patrol. Female, did not respond. Returned to station without incident. The phone rang at 1:02 a.m. I looked at it. It was a beige rotary phone mounted on the wall near the kitchenette. The ring was mechanical and loud, filling the small room with a sound like a metal bell being struck. I counted the rings. 5, 10, 15. At 23 rings, it stopped. I logged the call. 1:02 a.m. to 1:04 a.m. Landline phone, unanswered as per procedure. At 1:44 a.m., I stood at the light panel by the front door. The panel had 6 switches, each controlling a different set of exterior bulbs. I watched the second hand on my watch move. At 1:45 exactly, I flipped all 6 switches down. The station went dark. I could see nothing through the windows except the faint smear of the Milky Way. I sat at the desk. I did not turn on the monitors. I waited. At 1:52 a.m., something tapped on the north window. Not knocking, tapping, a light, irregular rhythm, like fingernails on glass. I did not look. I counted the taps, 17, 18, 19. They stopped at 24. At 2:01 a.m., the tapping resumed. Same window, slower this time. I counted 11 taps before it stopped again. At 2:14 a.m., I checked my watch every 3 seconds. At 2:15 a.m., 58 seconds, I stood. At 2:16 a.m., I flipped the exterior lights back on. Through the north window, I saw nothing but saguaros, an empty desert. No movement, no shapes, just the hard edges of rock and plant against the sky. I logged the event, 1:52 to 2:01 a.m., tapping on north window, 24 taps. 2:01 to 2:05 a.m., 11 taps. No visual confirmation attempted. Exterior lights restored at 2:16 a.m. At 2:30 a.m., I performed my second radio check-in. Station 4, Channel 6, check-in. Static, 4 seconds. Then, Station 4, confirmed. I exhaled again. The protocol was holding. At 2:43 a.m., I caught myself looking at the southern ridge. I jerked my gaze away immediately, focusing on the clock above the desk. The clock read 2:43 and 12 seconds. I stared at it without blinking. I counted to 180. 3 minutes. When I looked away, my neck was stiff and my eyes were dry. I did not look south again until 3:16 a.m. The rest of the night passed without incident. At 4:30 a.m., dispatch confirmed my final check-in. At 5:45 a.m., the eastern sky turned pink. At 6 a.m., Delgado arrived. He reviewed my logbook without comment. He checked the supply room, the radio charger, the camera feeds. He nodded once. "Good," he said. "Same thing tomorrow. And the next night. And every night after that." "What happens if I break one of the rules?" Delgado picked up his keys. "You don't want to know, and I don't want to tell you. Just follow the procedures." He left at 6:14 a.m. I drove back to my motel in the nearest town, 26 miles east, and slept until 2 p.m. The second night was harder. I arrived at Station 4 at 5:50 p.m. I retrieved nothing from the maintenance shed. I verified my supplies. I covered the visitor center windows at 10:52 p.m. I sat at the desk and waited. The footsteps came earlier this time. 10:47 p.m. 4 circuits instead of 3. 192 steps. When they stopped, I heard something else. A low, rhythmic breathing. Just outside the e-service door. It continued for 11 minutes, then stopped without warning. At 12:30 a.m., dispatch confirmed my check-in. At 12:50 a.m., I began my patrol. The voice came at 1:11 a.m. from the same direction as before. "David, please, I'm hurt." I did not respond. I kept walking. "David, I fell. My leg is broken. I can't move." I walked faster. My flashlight beam jumped with each step. I counted 140, 139, 138. "David, why won't you help me?" 73 steps to the station. I could see its shape against the ridge. "Your mother's name is Linda." I stopped. The voice was behind me now, closer than before, maybe 30 feet. "She lives in Gilbert. She sends you birthday cards with $20 bills inside, even though you're 34 years old. She calls you Davy." My hand was shaking. I switched the flashlight to my other hand and resumed walking. I did not turn around. I did not respond. "She's proud of you, David. She doesn't know about the hospital bills. She doesn't know about the drinking. She doesn't know you took this job because you couldn't stand to look at yourself anymore." 42 steps. 31 steps. 20. I reached the station and locked the door behind me. My hands were still shaking. I sat at the desk and wrote in the logbook, and my handwriting was uneven, slanting left when it should have slanted right. 1:11 a.m. to 1:17 a.m. Voice calling my name during patrol. Female, used specific personal details. Did not respond, returned to station. Delgado arrived at 6 a.m. He read the entry without expression. It knows things, I said. Yes. How? Wrong question. He closed the logbook. Right question is, did you answer it? No. Then you're fine. He did not elaborate. I drove to my motel and did not sleep until noon. The third night, I met Reyes. She was a trainee, assigned to shadow me for 1 week before taking over, Station 2, 8 miles north. She was young, maybe 25, with short black hair and a calm, attentive manner that reminded me of paramedics I'd known. She arrived at 5:30 p.m. with her own laminated rule sheet and a notebook full of questions. Delgado said you've had a clean week so far, she said. 2 nights. That's good. Station 2 is supposedly quieter, less foot traffic. She paused. I mean tourist traffic, day hikers. I nodded. I did not correct her. At 10:55 p.m., we walked to the visitor center together. I showed her the curtain procedure. She watched carefully, counted the panels, tugged the edges. 6 panels, she said. All overlapping, check. We returned to Station 4. At 11:22 p.m., the footsteps began. Reyes heard them too. She froze at the desk, her pen hovering over her notebook. What is that? Footsteps. They circle the building. Don't look. She lowered her pen. The rules don't mention footsteps. They don't mention everything. Some things you learn by doing. The footsteps completed 5 circuits that night. 240 steps. Reyes counted along with me, her lips moving silently. When they stopped, she wrote in her notebook for 3 minutes without speaking. At 12:30 a.m., I performed the radio check-in. Reyes listened, her hand on her own radio. Station 4, Channel 6, check-in. Static. 2 seconds. Then, Station 4, acknowledged. I felt my stomach drop. What does that mean? Reyes asked. I switched to Channel 9 without answering. I clipped the radio to my belt and did not touch it again. What does acknowledged mean? Reyes repeated. It means we don't use the radio until 2:30. Stay quiet. Stay inside. She stared at me. That's not, dispatch, just... It wasn't dispatch. I did not explain further. Reyes fell silent. At 2:30 a.m., I switched back to Channel 6 and tried again. Station 4, Channel 6, check in. 5 seconds of static. Then, Station 4, confirmed. Previous transmission error. Disregard. I logged both responses. Reyes watched me write, her face pale in the monitor light. How often does that happen? I don't know. It was my first time. What would have happened if you'd responded to the first one? I set down the pen. I don't know that either, and I don't want to find out. The 4th night, Reyes made an error. It was 1:58 a.m. I was at the desk, timing the exterior light blackout. Reyes was near the kitchenette, checking the water supply. The north window was dark. We were between 1:45 and 2:15, lights off. And the station was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Reyes said, I think I see something. I looked up. She was facing the north window, her body angled toward the glass. Reyes, don't look at the window right now. It's moving. I can see it against the stars. Reyes! She stepped closer to the glass. I stood up from the desk. There's something out there. It's big. It's shaped like... I crossed the room in 4 steps and grabbed her arm. I pulled her back from the window, harder than I intended. She stumbled into the desk and knocked the logbook to the floor. What the hell? Rule 7. Don't look at the southern ridge between 2:45 and 3:15. It's not 3 o'clock yet, and that's the north window. It doesn't matter. During the blackout, you don't look outside. At all. Through any window. She was angry. Her jaw was tight and her eyes were hard. That's not what the rules say. The rules don't say everything. Then how am I supposed to know? I picked up the logbook. My hands were steady, but my heartbeat was not. You learn. You watch. You ask questions after, not during. Reyes did not speak to me for the next 2 hours. At 2:16 a.m., I restored the exterior lights. At 2:30 a.m., dispatch confirmed our check-in. At 4:30 a.m., dispatch confirmed our final check-in. At 6 a.m., Reyes left without saying goodbye. She did not return for her second night of training. I received a message from dispatch at 5 p.m. Trainee reassigned. Proceed with standard solo operations. I never learned what happened to her. The 5th night, I received the amendments. They arrived via the station's fax machine at 9:14 p.m. A single sheet of paper, printed in the same font as the original rules. The header said, Operational Amendments, Station 4, effective immediately. I read them. 1. Addendum to Rule 5. If dispatch uses a confirmation code from a previous shift, yesterday's code or earlier, terminate the radio contact immediately. Switch to channel 9 and do not use the radio again until the next scheduled check-in. Previous codes are logged in the back of your station logbook for reference. 2. New Rule 13. The south perimeter fence now requires physical inspection every 90 minutes between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. Walk the fence line and count the posts. The correct total is 47. If you count 48 posts, return to the station immediately without completing the circuit. Do not investigate the additional post. 3. Addendum to Rule 9. A solitary coyote that approaches within 30 feet of your position without making any sound is not a coyote. Do not run. Do not make sudden movements. Back away slowly while maintaining indirect eye contact. If it follows, stop and remain still until it loses interest or sunrise occurs. 4. New Rule 14. Park personnel who have not logged a radio check-in for more than 45 minutes should not be approached if encountered during patrol. Maintain a distance of at least 50 feet. Do not initiate conversation. If they approach you, return to the station by the most direct route available. 5. New Rule 15. The storage closet in the visitor center annex must remain locked at all times. The key is labeled SC-V on your ring. Do not open this door for any reason. If you hear sounds from inside the closet, do not investigate. Log the time and duration only. 6. Addendum to Rule 7. If you inadvertently view the southern ridge during the restricted window, immediately focus your vision on a fixed point inside the station. The clock above the desk is recommended. Maintain focus for a minimum of 3 minutes. Do not close your eyes during this period. 7. New Rule 16. Any tracks found within 50 feet of the station that do not match standard boot treads or documented wildlife patterns must be photographed and treated with coarse salt. Use the salt from the supply room only. Apply in a continuous line across the tracks, minimum 6 inches wide. Do not use table salt or any other sodium compound. 8. Addendum to Rule 12. If the voice calling your name uses specific personal information, names of family members, details about your past, information not available through public records, this indicates an escalation. Do not respond. Initiate emergency protocol. 1 immediately and remain in shelter until sunrise. I read the amendments 3 times. I taped them to the wall beside the original rules. I checked the back of the logbook and found a list of previous confirmation codes, dated and initialed. Yesterday's code was Foxtrot 9. Today's code was Hotel 7. At 11 p.m., I walked the south perimeter fence for the first time. The fence was chain link, 6 feet tall, topped with 3 strands of barbed wire. It marked the boundary between the preserve and private ranch land to the south. The posts were steel, sunk in concrete, spaced 8 feet apart. I counted them as I walked. 1, 2, 3. The night was quiet. The stars were sharp. I counted 47 posts, no more, no less. I returned to the station at 11:34 p.m. and logged the patrol. At 12:30 a.m., I performed the radio check-in. Station 4, Channel 6, check-in. Static. Then, Station 4, confirmed. Code is Hotel 7. I exhaled. Copy that. Hotel 7 confirmed. At 1 a.m., the phone rang. 27 rings. I did not answer. At 1:45 a.m., I killed the exterior lights. At 2:16 a.m., I restored them. At 2:30 a.m., I walked the fence again. 47 posts. At 2:32 a.m., dispatch confirmed my check-in. Code was still Hotel 7. At 3 a.m., I began my patrol of the North Trail. At 3:22 a.m., I found the tracks. They were in the middle of the trail, pressed into a patch of soft sand near the dry wash. They were roughly the shape of human footprints, but longer, maybe 14 inches from heel to toe. And the toes were wrong. There were 6 of them, arranged in a fan pattern that no human foot could produce. I photographed the tracks with the station's digital camera. I retrieved the salt from my pack. I'd started carrying a small bag during patrols after the amendments arrived, and poured a line across the impressions 6 inches wide, exactly as instructed. The salt hissed when it touched the sand. I did not investigate the sound. I returned to the station by 3:41 a.m. I logged the tracks, uploaded the photographs to the station's computer, and did not look at them again. At 4:30 a.m., dispatch confirmed my final check-in. I watched the sunrise alone. On the 8th night, I learned what happened to the previous guard at Station 2. His name was Montoya. He'd worked the overnight shift for 3 years without incident. Then, 6 weeks before I was hired, he stopped logging radio check-ins. Dispatch sent a ranger to investigate. The ranger found Station 2 unlocked, with all the lights on and the radio still tuned to Channel 6. Montoya's truck was parked outside. His keys were on the desk. His logbook was open to a half-finished entry. The entry read, 2:47 a.m. Observed figure on Southern Ridge. Appeared humanoid, but proportions inconsistent. Estimated height 7 to 8 feet. Moving eastward along ridgeline. Maintained visual contact for approximately, the sentence ended there. No period. No continuation on the next page. Montoya was never found. His personal effects were returned to his family in New Mexico. His position was not filled for 6 weeks. Then Reyes was assigned. Then Reyes was reassigned. Then Station 2 was closed indefinitely. I learned all of this from dispatch, not over the radio, over the landline at 3:15 p.m., well within safe hours. The dispatcher's name was Harmon. He spoke in the same flat, professional tone he used during check-ins, but there was something underneath it, a carefulness, a reluctance. "You've been handling the protocols well," he said. "Your logs are thorough. Your compliance rate is perfect. Thank you." The amendments should help. They're based on pattern analysis from the past 18 months, incident reports, logbook entries, field observations. Pattern analysis of what? Harmon was quiet for a moment. Of the things that don't follow the rules. He hung up before I could ask another question. I did not call back. The 9th night, something stood outside the e-service door for 4 hours. I heard it arrive at 11:42 p.m. Heavy footsteps, not the light circling pattern I'd grown accustomed to. These were deliberate, purposeful, approaching from the southeast. They stopped at the east door. Then nothing. No knocking. No breathing. No tapping. Just presence. I sat at the desk and watched the monitors. The camera covering the east approach showed empty desert. Nothing in frame. But the audio feed picked up something. A faint sound, like fabric rustling. Like something shifting its weight from foot to foot. I did not investigate. I did not look through the peephole. I performed my radio check-ins, confirmed both times. Walked the south fence at 11 p.m. and 2:30 a.m., 47 posts, both times. Covered the visitor center windows, killed the exterior lights, restored the exterior lights. I followed every procedure exactly. At 3:41 a.m., the footsteps moved away. Southeast, the direction they'd come from. 12 steps, then silence. I logged the event, 11:42 p.m. to 3:41 a.m. Presence at East Service door. No visual confirmation. No verbal contact. Departed without incident. The word presence felt inadequate, but I had no other word for it. On the 12th night, dispatch gave me the emergency protocols. They arrived by fax at 8:47 p.m., printed on yellow paper instead of white. The header said emergency procedures. All stations, activation at discretion. 1. If multiple rules are violated simultaneously, or if environmental conditions prevent standard compliance, relocate immediately to the supply room. Bring the following items: radio, flashlight, water, minimum 1 liter, salt, minimum 1 pound, emergency lantern, matches. Seal the supply room door with the provided security tape. Apply tape in 3 full rotations around the door frame, overlapping by at least 1 inch. Do not break the seal until you have counted 600 seconds of complete silence. Complete silence means no sounds of any kind, including wind, wildlife, or mechanical operation. 2. If station power fails, light the emergency lantern immediately. This is the kerosene lantern stored in the supply room, not the electric backup lantern. Position the lit lantern in the center of the main room, at least 3 feet from any wall or furniture. Do not allow the flame to extinguish until power is restored. If the flame extinguishes on its own, freeze in place and remain motionless until you hear the generator restart. Do not attempt to relight the lantern manually. 3. If you are trapped outside the station during a protocol violation, proceed immediately to the emergency cache at coordinate marker 7. This location is 200 yards northeast of Station 4, marked by a metal post with reflective tape. The cache contains water, 2 liters, backup radio, pre-tuned to channel 9, salt, 2 pounds, emergency blanket, flare gun with 3 cartridges. Remain at the cache until you receive the all-clear code from dispatch. The all-clear code is station your number. Morning inventory confirmed. Do not leave the cache area for any other message. 4. During a prolonged event, defined as more than 2 hours of continuous anomalous activity. Reduce radio communication to essential codes only. Full sentences are not recommended during prolonged events. Use the following codes: Alpha, situation stable; Bravo, situation deteriorating; Charlie, immediate assistance required; Delta, unable to respond, await sunrise. Dispatch will acknowledge with the same code if transmission is received. I taped the yellow sheet next to the amendments. I checked the supply room. I verified the security tape, the kerosene lantern, the matches. I inventoried the salt, 4 pounds, 3 ounces. I logged everything. At 9:30 p.m., I walked to coordinate marker 7 and located the emergency cache. It was buried in a shallow depression beside a boulder, covered with a tarp and a layer of sand. I did not open it. I noted the location in my logbook: 247 steps from the station's front door, bearing northeast by north. On the 14th night, the prolonged event began. The weather shifted around 6 p.m. Clouds rolled in from the west, thick and low, turning the sky the color of ash. By sunset, I couldn't see the ridge at all. The temperature dropped 19 degrees in 2 hours. The wind picked up, gusting to 30 miles per hour, then 40. By 9 p.m., the first dust storm hit. I sealed the station windows with tape. I covered the camera lenses with plastic bags to protect them from sand. I moved the radio, the logbook, and 2 liters of water to the supply room. But I did not seal the door yet. The protocols were clear. Emergency measures only when standard compliance became impossible. At 10:15 p.m., the power failed. The monitors went black. The lights died. The refrigerator's hum cut off mid-cycle. I stood in complete darkness, disoriented by the sudden silence beneath the wind. I found the supply room by memory, 14 steps from the desk, then left through the doorway. I felt along the shelves until I found the kerosene lantern. I found the matches. I struck one. It took 3 tries because my hands were shaking. The lantern caught. I adjusted the wick until the flame was steady, 1 inch tall, bright yellow, unwavering despite the wind outside. I carried it to the main room and placed it in the center, exactly as instructed. 3 feet from the desk, 4 feet from the wall. I sat down and watched it burn. At 10:58 p.m., I heard the footsteps. They were outside, circling the building. Same pattern as always, but faster this time. 1 circuit every 47 seconds instead of 60. I counted 5 circuits, then 10, then 15. At the 23rd circuit, they stopped. The knocking started at the e-service door. 1 knock, I counted to 60. The knock did not repeat. At 11:03 p.m., the knock came again. 1 knock, I counted to 60. No repetition. At 11:11 p.m., I heard my name. David. It came from the east, from just outside the service door. A man's voice this time. Familiar, but I couldn't place it. David, let me in. The storm is getting worse. I did not respond. I watched the lantern flame. David, I'm from Station 2. My radio's dead. I need shelter. Station 2 was closed. Had been closed for 6 weeks. The voice was lying. David, please. I've been walking for hours. I can't find the cache. I picked up my radio. I switched to channel 6. I keyed the transmitter. Station 4, reporting anomalous contact at east service door. Maintaining position. Code Bravo. Static. 3 seconds. Then, Station 4, Bravo acknowledged. Maintain protocols. The voice outside continued. David, I know you're in there. I can see the light. Just open the door. Just for a second. I did not respond. David, your mother called me. She's worried about you. She wants to know why you haven't visited. I did not respond. David, I have a message from Linda. She says she forgives you for the drinking. She says she knows about the hospital bills. She says it's okay. I did not respond. I watched the flame. At 11:47 p.m., the voice stopped. At 11:51 p.m., the knocking resumed. Continuous this time, not pausing between strikes. A steady rhythm, like a heartbeat, like something patient and mechanical testing the door. I checked the deadbolts from across the room. All three were engaged. I did not approach the door. The knocking continued for 42 minutes. At 12:33 a.m., it stopped. I waited 60 seconds, then keyed the radio. Station 4, contact ceased at 12:33. Maintaining position. Code Alpha. Static, 5 seconds. Then, Station 4, Alpha, acknowledged. Continue monitoring. At 12:57 a.m., the generator restarted. The lights flickered on. The monitors hummed to life. The refrigerator clicked and began its usual rattle. I crossed to the power panel and verified the readings. Generator fuel at 63%. Battery backup at 41%. All systems nominal. I did not extinguish the lantern. The protocols said to keep it lit until power was restored, but they did not say to extinguish it after. I left it burning in the center of the room. At 1 a.m., the phone rang. 29 rings. I did not answer. At 1:45 a.m., I killed the exterior lights. The dust storm was still raging outside, but the protocols did not include weather exceptions. I sat in darkness and listened to the wind. At 1:52 a.m., I heard something new. Not footsteps, not knocking, not a voice. A sound like breathing, but wrong, wet and irregular, with pauses in unexpected places. It came from the north window. I did not look at the north window. I watched the lantern flame. The breathing continued. At 1:59 a.m., it was joined by another sound. A low, rhythmic scraping, like fingernails drawn slowly across glass. I did not look. At 2:04 a.m., the breathing stopped. The scraping stopped. The wind continued, but everything else fell silent. At 2:14 a.m., I checked my watch every 3 seconds. At 2:15 a.m. and 57 seconds, I stood. At 2:16 a.m., I restored the exterior lights. The storm was beginning to break. Through the north window, I could see the ridge again, a black line against a charcoal sky. Nothing moved on the ridgeline. I logged the night so far, 3 pages of entries, times and durations and codes. My handwriting was small and even. I did not trust myself to write larger. At 2:30 a.m., I walked the south fence. The wind had died to 15 miles per hour. Visibility was improving. I counted the posts. 1, 2, 3. The flashlight beam cut clean lines through the settling dust. At post 31, I stopped. There were tracks in the sand beside the fence. Long, narrow, 6-toed. Fresh, the dust had not yet filled them. I photographed the tracks. I salted them 6 inches wide. I resumed counting. 45, 46, 47. I stopped again. I was at the end of the fence line where it met the corner post. Beyond the corner post, there should have been nothing but open desert. There was a 48th post. It stood 6 feet past the corner, leaning slightly to the south. It was made of the same steel as the others. It had the same concrete base, but the chain link fabric did not extend to it. It stood alone, unconnected, marking nothing. I did not approach it. I did not investigate. I turned and walked back to the station by the most direct route, counting my steps. 164. At 2:43 a.m., I logged the fence patrol. 48 posts observed. Additional post at southeast corner. Unconnected to fence line. Did not approach. Recommend daylight investigation. At 2:45 a.m., I focused on the clock above the desk and did not look away until 2:48 a.m. At 2:50 a.m., dispatch confirmed my check-in. Code was Hotel 7. I did not mention the 48th post over the radio. At 3:30 a.m., I began my patrol of the North Trail. The air was cool and still. The dust had settled. Stars were visible again, faint through the thinning clouds. I walked at a steady pace, counting steps, sweeping the flashlight. At 3:44 a.m., I saw the coyote. It was standing on the trail 40 feet ahead, facing me. A solitary animal, medium-sized, gray-brown, with large ears and a narrow muzzle. It did not run when I shone my light on it. I stopped walking. I watched the coyote. It did not move. I took one step backward. The coyote took one step forward. I stopped. The coyote stopped. 20 seconds passed. The coyote did not blink. Its eyes reflected the flashlight beam. 2 yellow-green points in the darkness. I took another step backward. The coyote took another step forward. I remembered the amendment. A solitary coyote that approaches within 30 feet of your position without making any sound is not a coyote. 38 feet. I had 2 feet of margin. I backed away slowly, maintaining indirect eye contact, looking at the animal's shoulder rather than its face. I counted my steps. 1, 2, 3. The coyote matched each step, closing the distance by exactly the same amount I retreated. At step 17, I was back at the trailhead. The station was behind me, 30 feet away. The coyote was 34 feet ahead, still matching my pace, still silent. I stopped. The coyote stopped. I waited 10 seconds, 20, 30. The coyote sat down on the trail. It lowered its head and closed its eyes. I backed through the station door and locked it behind me. Through the north window, I could see the coyote still sitting there, motionless, a gray shape against the darker ground. At 4:01 a.m., it was gone. I logged the encounter, 3:44 to 4:01 a.m. Solitary coyote on North Trail. Silent approach within 34 feet. Did not run or make sudden movements. Subject departed after approximately 17 minutes. At 4:30 a.m., dispatch confirmed my final check-in. I watched the sunrise through the east window, the sky turning from black to purple to orange. The coyote did not return. On the 19th night, Jensen arrived. He was a replacement, not for me, but for the day shift ranger who'd requested a transfer after 22 years in the preserve. Jensen was young, maybe 28, with a military background and a habit of asking questions that sounded like challenges. He arrived at Station 4 at 5:45 p.m. to review the overnight procedures. I showed him the logbook, the rules, the amendments, the emergency protocols. He read everything twice, then looked at me with an expression I recognized. "You believe all this?" "I follow it." "That's not the same thing." I closed the logbook. "It's the only thing that matters." Jensen stayed until 9 p.m., asking questions, taking notes. He wanted to know the logic behind the rules. Why the specific times? Why the specific distances? Why certain sounds required response and others required silence? "I don't know why," I told him. "I just know what happens when you don't comply." "Which is what?" "I don't know that either. The people who found out aren't here to explain." Jensen left at 9:06 p.m. He was scheduled to return the following week to shadow a full overnight shift. I hoped he would follow the procedures. I suspected he would not. On the 21st night, Jensen made his error. He arrived at 8 p.m., 2 hours early, with a duffel bag full of equipment, night vision goggles, motion sensors, a digital audio recorder, 3 trail cameras. "I want to document the phenomena," he said. "Build an evidence base. Figure out what's actually happening out here." The procedures don't allow personal equipment. The procedures don't mention personal equipment at all. He was right. The rules covered behavior, timing, thresholds, responses. They said nothing about what you could or couldn't bring with you. "Fine," I said. "But you follow my instructions during the shift. No exceptions." Jensen agreed. He spent the first 3 hours setting up his equipment. Motion sensors at the north and south windows. Trail cameras at the east service door. The audio recorder running continuously on the desk. I watched him work and said nothing. At 11 p.m., we walked the south fence together. Jensen counted the posts out loud. 33, 34, 35. He was methodical, careful, his voice steady in the darkness. At post 47, we stopped. "That's the end of the fence line," I said. "We turn back here." "There's another post." I looked. The 48th post was still there, 6 feet beyond the corner, unchanged. "I know, we don't approach it." "Why not?" "The rules say 47 posts. If you count 48, you return to the station without completing the circuit." "We've already completed the circuit. The 48th post is past the end." "Jensen," he walked toward the post. "Jensen, stop." He didn't stop. He walked to the 48th post and stood beside it, shining his flashlight on the concrete base. "It's the same construction as the others," he said. "Same steel, same spacing pattern on the base, but there's no fence fabric attached. Come back to the station. There's something written on it." He crouched down, aiming his light at the post's surface. Numbers carved into the metal. "Jensen, now." He stood up. He looked at me, then back at the post. Then he started walking, not toward the station, but along the fence line, past the 48th post into the open desert. I did not follow him. I walked back to the station, locked the door, and logged the incident. 11:14 p.m. Security personnel. Jensen violated Rule 13, amended. Approached 48th post, observed carved numbers, departed fence line heading south. Did not pursue. At 11:58 p.m., Jensen's trail camera activated. I watched the monitor as the east service door camera recorded a shape moving past, left to right, approximately 8 feet tall. At 12:30 a.m., I performed the radio check-in. "Station 4, Channel 6, check-in. Station 4, confirmed. Code is Juliet 3. Be advised, secondary personnel, Jensen has not logged a check-in." "Copy that. Jensen departed fence line at 11:14. Last observed heading south. Did not pursue." "Understood. Maintain protocols. Do not search." I spent the rest of the night alone. The footsteps circled 4 times. The phone rang at 1:09 a.m., 31 rings. The breathing returned at 1:53 a.m., wet and irregular, at the north window. I killed the exterior lights at 1:45, restored them at 2:16. I watched the lantern flame, which I'd kept burning since the dust storm. I did not sleep. At 5:45 a.m., Jensen walked out of the desert. He came from the south, emerging from behind the maintenance shed, walking in a straight line toward the station's front door. He moved slowly, deliberately, his arms at his sides. His face was blank. I watched him through the north window. I did not open the door. He stopped 10 feet from the entrance. He stood there for 4 minutes, swaying slightly, like a man fighting sleep. Then he spoke. "David." His voice was flat, no inflection, no recognition. "David, open the door." I did not respond. "David, I'm back. The shift is over. Let me in." I checked the time, 5:49 a.m. The sun was cresting the eastern ridge. Full daylight was minutes away. "David, I need to log the shift. I need to file my report. Open the door." I watched him through the window. His eyes were open, but they weren't focused on anything. They were looking past me, past the station, at something I couldn't see. At 5:53 a.m., he turned and walked back toward the maintenance shed. He disappeared behind it. I did not see him again. I logged the incident. 5:45 to 5:53 a.m. Jensen returned from desert, approached station, requested entry. Voice flat, eyes unfocused. Did not comply with request. Jensen departed south at 5:53. At 6 a.m., dispatch called on the landline. Station 4, confirm status. Station 4, status nominal. Jensen encountered at 5:45, but did not appear. Intact. Understood. Jensen is listed as non-compliant. Do not engage. Repeat. Do not engage if encountered again. Copy that. A replacement will be assigned within 72 hours. Maintain standard operations until then. The line went dead. I did not see Jensen again for 6 days. When I did, he was standing at the south fence at 2:33 a.m., silhouetted against the stars. I counted the posts from a distance, 47, plus one figure that did not belong. I returned to the station and logged the sighting. I did not approach. On the 29th night, I received the final amendments. They arrived by fax at 8:22 p.m. A single sheet, handwritten, not printed. The handwriting was cramped and uneven, slanting left. The header said, Station 4, only, personal addendum, effective immediately. There was no signature. 1. The 48th post is no longer safe to observe, even from a distance. If you see it during a fence patrol, close your eyes and count to 30 before resuming. Do not look directly at the post. Do not photograph the post. Do not record the numbers carved into its base. 2. Jensen, or what appears to be Jensen, may approach the station during overnight shifts. He will ask to be let inside. He will claim to have information about the phenomena. He will offer to share his recordings, his evidence, his conclusions. Do not engage. Do not open the door. Treat him as you would any other anomalous contact. 3. The lantern in the main room must now burn continuously, not just during power failures. Check the fuel level at the start of each shift. Refill as needed. If the flame extinguishes for any reason, evacuate to the emergency cache immediately. 4. Your mother has not called the station. She does not have this number. She has never had this number. If you receive a call claiming to be from her, hang up, log the call, do not answer if she calls back. 5. You have been assigned to Station 4 indefinitely. No replacement is forthcoming. No transfer requests will be processed. Maintain protocols. Comply with all procedures. Stay. I read the addendum 3 times. I checked the lantern fuel, 74%. I logged the document receipt. I taped the sheet to the wall beside the others. At 9 p.m., I walked to the visitor center and covered the windows. At 11 p.m., I walked the south fence. My eyes closed for 30 seconds as I passed the southeast corner. At 12:30 a.m., dispatch confirmed my check-in. At 1:07 a.m., the phone rang. I looked at it. The caller ID, a small digital screen I hadn't noticed before, displayed a number I recognized. My mother's number, her landline in Gilbert. 22 rings. I did not answer. At 1:31 a.m., the ringing stopped. Immediately, my radio crackled. "David," my mother's voice, coming through channel 6. "David, honey, it's Mom. I've been trying to reach you." I switched to channel 9. The voice followed. "David, are you there? The nice man at dispatch gave me this frequency. He said you'd be listening." I turned off the radio. I sat at the desk and watched the lantern flame. At 2 a.m., the footsteps began. Faster than usual. 6 circuits in 4 minutes. Then they stopped, and the knocking started, not at the east service door, but at the north window, directly in front of me. I did not look at the window. "David, let me in. It's cold out here." My mother's voice, outside, 12 feet away. "David, I drove all the way from Gilbert. I was worried about you. Please, honey, just open the window." I watched the flame. "David, I know about the hospital bills. I know you didn't want to burden me, but I'm here now. I can help." The knocking intensified, not fingernails, something harder, something blunt. "David, why won't you look at me?" I closed my eyes. I counted to 100. When I opened them, the knocking had stopped. The voice was gone. I logged the incident, 1:57 to 2:14 a.m. Voice mimicking mother at north window. Refused engagement. Voice ceased without further escalation. At 2:30 a.m., I walked to the south fence, 47 posts. I kept my eyes closed for the 30-second count at the corner. At 3 a.m., the phone rang again. I looked at the caller ID, my mother's number. 39 rings. I did not answer. At 3:40 a.m., I heard movement at the east service door. Not knocking, not breathing. A scraping sound, like something dragging itself along the exterior wall. I checked the monitors. The east camera showed nothing. The scraping continued for 17 minutes, then stopped. At 4:30 a.m., dispatch confirmed my final check-in. I watched the sunrise and did not sleep. The 34th night was the siege. It began at 9:06 p.m. with a sound I'd never heard before. A low, sustained tone, like a horn or a siren coming from the south. It lasted 11 seconds, then stopped. Then started again, then stopped. I checked the monitors. All cameras showed empty desert. At 9:22 p.m., the temperature inside the station dropped 18 degrees in 4 minutes. I grabbed the radio, the flashlight, the water, the salt. I moved to the supply room. I sealed the door with security tape, 3 rotations, overlapping by 2 inches. I sat on the floor with my back against the wall and waited. The supply room was 8 feet by 10 feet, lined with metal shelving. The lantern cast long shadows that swayed with the flame. I could hear the wind rising outside, the same dry howl that preceded the dust storm 2 weeks earlier. At 9:47 p.m., something hit the exterior wall. Not knocked, hit. A single impact, hard enough to rattle the shelving, then another, then another. I counted the impacts, 7, 8, 9. They circled the building, 1 strike per wall, then resumed at the north side. 16 impacts in total before they stopped. At 10:02 p.m., the power failed. The emergency lights kicked on, dim red strips along the floor. But the monitors went dark. I could hear the generator trying to start, a grinding, coughing sound that repeated 4 times, then fell silent. I checked the kerosene lantern, still burning, still centered in the main room. At 10:15 p.m., I heard voices. Not one voice, many. A chorus of voices speaking simultaneously, overlapping and blending until I couldn't distinguish individual words. They came from outside, from all directions, rising and falling like a chant. I pressed my hands over my ears. I could still hear them. At 10:33 p.m., I keyed the radio. Station 4, code Charlie. Repeat, code Charlie. Static, 10 seconds. Then, Station 4, Charlie acknowledged. Maintain position. Reinforcement unavailable at this time. Reinforcement unavailable. I logged the response in my notebook, my handwriting cramped and uneven. At 10:51 p.m., the voices stopped. Silence. Complete silence. No wind, no insects, no generator hum. I held my breath and listened. At 10:53 p.m., someone knocked on the supply room door. 3 knocks. Slow. Deliberate. I did not respond. 3 more knocks. David! Jensen's voice. Inside the station. Inside the main room, on the other side of the sealed door. David, let me in. I found the evidence. I know what's happening. I did not respond. David, the cameras recorded everything. The motion sensors, the audio. It's all documented. We can end this. We can shut it down. I checked the seal on the door. 3 rotations. Tape intact. No gaps. David, I know you're in there. I can see the light through the crack. There was no crack. The seal was complete. David, your mother is worried. She drove all the way from Gilbert. She's waiting outside. I pressed my back against the wall. I counted my breaths. In for 4, out for 4. David, the lantern is almost out. You need to refill it. The protocol says continuous burn. The lantern. I'd left it in the main room when I sealed myself in the supply room. David, I'm opening the door now. The doorknob rattled. The tape held. David, I'm coming in. The rattling intensified. I could hear the deadbolt straining. I could hear the tape stretching. I closed my eyes. I started counting. 1, 2, 3. The protocol said 600 seconds of complete silence. I wasn't at silence yet. I couldn't start the count. At 11:04 p.m., the rattling stopped. Jensen's voice said, "Okay, David, I'll wait." Then silence. I waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5. At 11:10 p.m., I heard footsteps, not circling the building, walking away. Heavy, deliberate, fading into the distance. I started the count. 1, 2, 3, 50, 100, 200. At count 400, I heard the wind return. At count 500, I heard the generator restart. At count 600, I broke the seal. The main room was empty. The lantern was still burning. The monitors were flickering back to life. I checked the exterior cameras. Empty desert, empty trails. No movement. I logged the incident. 9:06 p.m. to 11:10 p.m. Prolonged event. Multiple anomalies. Emergency Protocol 1 initiated. Seal held. Contact with entity mimicking Jensen. Did not comply. At 12:30 a.m., dispatch confirmed my check-in. I did not mention Jensen. At 4:30 a.m., dispatch confirmed my final check-in. The sun rose at 6:18 a.m., orange and cold. That morning, I wrote a new document. I sat at the desk with a blank sheet of paper and a black pen. I wrote in small, precise letters, no larger than necessary. The header said, Station 4, Overnight Procedures, Orientation for New Personnel. I wrote down everything I knew. I started with the original rules, all 12 in order, with the exact wording I'd memorized. Then the amendments, all 8, plus the personal addendum, plus the patterns I'd noticed that no one had written down. The footsteps and their timing, the breathing and its rhythm, the voice and its escalations. I wrote about Jensen, I wrote about Reyes, I wrote about Montoya, and the half-finished sentence in his logbook. I wrote about the 48th post and the numbers carved into its base, which I'd glimpsed once during a moment of carelessness. The numbers were a date from next year. I wrote about my mother's voice and the phone calls and the radio transmissions. I wrote about the lantern and the supply room and the 600 seconds of silence. I wrote, "If you are reading this, you have accepted the position at Station 4. You will work alone. You will follow the procedures. You will not ask why." I wrote, "The desert is not empty. It watches you. It learns you. It waits for mistakes." I wrote, "Do not give it your name. Do not answer when it calls. Do not look where it wants you to look." I wrote, "Comply, survive, pass it on." I folded the paper and placed it in the desk drawer beneath the logbook, where the next guard would find it. On the 40th night, I walked the south fence at 2:30 a.m. The stars were sharp. The wind was still. I counted the posts. 1, 2, 3. At post 46, I stopped. There was a figure ahead of me, standing at the fence line. It was tall, maybe 7 feet, and thin, with proportions that didn't match anything human. Its arms hung past its knees. Its head was tilted at an angle that suggested a broken neck. I did not approach. I did not speak. I turned and walked back to the station, counting my steps. 91. I logged the sighting. 2:37 a.m. Figure observed at south fence. Post 46. Humanoid, disproportionate. Did not engage. Returned to station. At 4:30 a.m., dispatch confirmed my final check-in. Station 4, confirmed. Any incidents to report? I looked at the logbook. 40 pages of entries. 40 nights of compliance. Negative, dispatch, standard shift, all protocols maintained. Copy that. Station 4, morning inventory confirmed. The sun rose. I packed my cooler and my keys. I walked to my car and drove 26 miles to the motel. I would return at 5 p.m. I would check the supply room. I would verify the lantern fuel. I would cover the visitor center windows. I would walk the fence and count the posts. I would follow the procedures. I would survive. The next guard would find my notes. They would read the rules. They would ask questions that had no answers. And eventually, they would learn what I had learned. The desert does not explain itself. It only tests you. It only watches. It only waits. I had been waiting for 40 nights now. I would wait for 40 more. The document in the desk drawer was my baton pass. Someone would need it someday. Someone who took this job for the same reasons I did. Money, debt, desperation, a willingness to work alone. They would read the rules. They would learn the procedures. They would follow them, or they would not. And the desert would keep watching. The desert would keep waiting. It always did. On my 42nd night, I found something new in the supply room. It was a small metal box tucked behind the bags of salt on the bottom shelf. I hadn't noticed it before. Maybe it had always been there. Maybe it hadn't. I opened it. Inside was a photograph. Black and white, faded, curling at the edges. It showed Station 4 from a distance. The same tan stucco walls, the same flat roof, the same ridge behind it. But in the photograph, there were people. A man stood in front of the station, facing the camera. He wore a uniform I didn't recognize, older style, different patches. His face was serious, professional, unremarkable. Behind him, barely visible in the shadow of the building, there were others. 3, maybe 4. Their faces were blurred, their shapes were wrong. I turned the photograph over. On the back, someone had written a date, March 1967. Below the date, in different handwriting, a single word, compliant. I placed the photograph back in the box. I placed the box back on the shelf. I did not report it to dispatch. Some things are not in the procedures. Some things are not meant to be explained. On the 45th night, the phone rang at 3:17 a.m. I checked the caller ID, unknown number. I watched the phone ring 16 times, 17, 18. At ring 22, I answered. Station 4. Silence. 3 seconds. Then a voice. Not my mother's, not Jensen's, not anyone I recognized. You found the photograph. I did not respond. You understand now. I did not respond. You have been added to the record. You are compliant. You will remain. The line went dead. I logged the call. 3:17 to 3:18 a.m. Inbound call, unknown number. Voice unidentified. Message, acknowledgement of compliance. Call terminated by caller. I did not mention the photograph. I did not mention the word compliant. Some things belong in the logbook. Some things do not. The 46th night was quiet. No footsteps, no knocking, no voices, no breathing at the windows. The fence had 47 posts. The phone did not ring. The radio confirmed every check-in without hesitation. I sat at the desk and watched the lantern burn. 71% fuel. Steady flame. 3 feet from any wall. At 4:30 a.m., dispatch confirmed my final check-in. Station 4, morning inventory confirmed. I said, copy that. The sun rose at 6:22 a.m. The ridge turned from black to brown to gold. The visitor center windows caught the light and flashed like mirrors. I packed my cooler. I checked the logbook one last time. I left the document in the desk drawer, where it had been for 6 nights now, waiting for the next guard. No replacement had been assigned. Dispatch had confirmed. Indefinite posting. No transfer requests. I accepted this. I had stopped asking questions that had no answers. The desert watched me walk to my car. The desert watched me drive away. The desert would watch me return in 11 hours, ready for another shift, ready to follow the procedures, ready to comply. That was my job now. That was my life. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the ridge, something waited for me to make a mistake. I would not make a mistake. I would follow the rules. I would count the posts. I would cover the windows and kill the lights and ignore the voices and watch the flame. I would survive, one night at a time, one procedure at a time, until the desert decided otherwise, until the desert was finished with me. The morning before my 50th night, I received a letter. It came to my motel room, slipped under the door sometime between 3 a.m. and 7 a.m. No envelope, just a single sheet of paper folded once. The header said, "For Station 4 personnel, retirement procedures." I read it. 1. Personnel may request retirement after completing 100 consecutive shifts without protocol violations. 2. Retirement requests must be submitted to dispatch via radio using the following phrase: station number, requesting final inventory confirmation. 3. Upon approval, personnel will receive an exit briefing at coordinate marker 12, 200 yards south of the station. Attend alone. Bring the station logbook and all personal addendums. 4. Personnel who complete the exit briefing will be released from duty with full compensation and no further obligations. 5. Personnel who do not complete the exit briefing will be reassigned. Below the procedures, in handwriting, I recognized Delgado's handwriting, cramped and slanting left. There was a single line. I made it to 87. I folded the letter and placed it in my bag. I would tape it to the wall with the others. 50 more nights, 50 more patrols, 50 more fence counts, 50 more radio check-ins, 50 more hours of watching the lantern burn and listening for footsteps and ignoring voices that knew my name. Then I would make the request. Then I would attend the briefing. Then I would be finished. Or I would be reassigned. Either way, the desert would decide. I arrived at Station 4 at 5:48 p.m. I checked the supply room, the lantern, the salt. I verified my equipment. 2.3 liters of water. Flashlight at 91%. 3 flares. At 6 p.m., I opened the logbook and began my shift. Night 50. 50 more to go. The desert was waiting.